A score for motion picture is a piece of architecture like the film itself, and it should have a shape and a form. And you look to where you're going to finally, where's the high point, so that you don't top yourself in the middle of the picture so you still have somewhere to go at the very end of the picture. It was interesting on Alien. I remember when I had meetings with them in the production office, there were storyboards, but there were directions emotionally to how the levels of emotion and terror were building in the picture, which I'd never seen before or after that. But it was sort of plotted that how this was going to build in terror, which was very interesting and an interesting way of doing it. So they were very careful. I think Ridley was very careful how he structured the film from that point of view. The music I wrote for Alien was very interesting. It was avant-garde. It's the kind of film that allowed me as a composer to stretch, to try various different effects, musical ideas with an orchestra. The picture allowed me to do it. The picture was so visually striking. The set designed by Giger was this sort of surrealistic sets, and it was a wonderful image, and to try and translate that emotionally into music. Then it was a strange juxtaposition of the characters, who were really sort of rough and tumble, dirty, unsophisticated people against this very sophisticated backdrop, visual. And they made a very interesting palette for me to try and write music to. The problem I had on that film was that I had one feeling, and I think the director had another feeling, and obviously the director perhaps was correct. In the first place, I thought, this is the most disgusting lot of people, this whole crew, they were totally unlikable, and I didn't care whether, the fact that they all got killed was fine by me, because they were rather disgusting people, and the only one I really started to feel sympathy for was the monster, quite frankly. And I thought, nobody's going to see this picture because nobody likes anybody. A scruffy lot, and they were, who cared? Well, I was wrong on that count. One of the problems I face today is I think that there's an overuse of music in films. And I've always been a big believer in silence in films. For instance, you take a film like Patton. The film was 3 hours long, and there was 32 minutes of music in the film. Chinatown was over 2 hours long, and there was 30 minutes of music. I use those two films as examples of brilliant filmmaking, but I think and I think the music itself was quite good for both those films, even though I wrote it, and trying to be modest. But I think that the reason that both those scores have been sort of classified as some of my best work is because of the judicious spotting of it and waiting for the right moment for the music to appear, and then allowing certain scenes to play by themselves. And in the case of like horror films or scary films or suspense films, I find nothing is more frightening than absolute silence. But it seems today that there's a tendency to not let anything be silent. And there are periods of, I've fought with, argued with directors, let the scene play, and let's wait for the appropriate moment and then bring the music in, or let's take the music out. I think that in the overall plan that silence should be part of the score. In contemporary music, silence, moments of silence actually are figured in the score by the composer. The piece will play, and then there's a moment of silence. It's almost part of the musical composition. There's something very terrifying about this stark stillness. And in the first Alien, there were many moments that were just subtle sound and no music whatsoever.
Jonesy.
I remember the scene towards the end of the picture when the monster was looking at Sigourney Weaver, and it was lustfully he was looking at her and started drooling. I had scored that scene twice. The first time I played it very frighteningly, and Ridley quite saying, no, he wanted something that was more sensuous. And I thought he was nuts, but then I realized what he wasn't. He was absolutely right in what he wanted, so I went that direction. And I thought, I thought the music, worked very well. And then when I saw the picture, there was no music there whatsoever. They'd left it all out. And of course, I was annoyed at first, but then I realized, in all honesty, just the slobbering of the monster, the little subtle little sounds of him looking lasciviously at Sigourney Weaver, really was frightening.